Wow, there are so many of you out there. Thank you so much for inviting us here, and thanks for getting up this morning for this thing, this Into the Wild moment. I got a little worried when I found out that this was called Into the Wild, because I don't know if you know this, but there's a popular book and movie where an idiot goes and dies, cold and hungry, in the back of a bus, in the back of a school bus. That's the last place you want to be when you're dying. Whatever. I mean, he was a little naive, a little romantic. He died. It's very sad. I don't know why the book and the movie were made, but I didn't want to end up like that. I don't think either of us did. And so it seemed a little daunting. I mean, we get paranoid, about the things that we do. Because when you get invited somewhere and the title of the thing is Into the Wild, you begin to wonder if they're trying to lure you into a trap. Is this the conference where we finally show up and somebody plays a joke on us? So go ahead, this is your moment. Go ahead, do whatever you're gonna do. We're ready. Nothing. Okay, good. All right, well, we have some stories to tell.
Yeah.
Into the Wild, I mean, interestingly enough, we of course don't want to end up dead in the back of the school bus like that poor young man. And unfortunately, it looks like our civilization is kind of headed in that direction. The way we keep insisting on profiting and growing and pursuing the same capitalist ideals that have come to define the last part of this century. And so that's what we've been focusing on in our work, is trying to understand that, trying to understand why we're doing it, and doing social experiments where we infiltrate business environments where decision makers from these industries, like the oil industry, are discussing their trade. And we try to do things that reveal what goes on, the mechanisms that keep that system going.
Yeah, and we have a social experiment today for you. It's a keynote. This is the first talk of the whole conference, so it's a great honor, and we thought we'd do something very special, which is tell a story that we've never told before in front of an audience, which means that it is going to be a social experiment because it's going to be true, the actual true story, instead of what we usually tell. And we don't mean to tell lies, it's just when you tell a story again and again and again, you tend to embroider, you add a little detail that gets an extra laugh, that makes people laugh or moan, or if they're silent too long, you just stop that part. You don't talk about that as much the next time, until finally you're telling a totally different story. But what we're going to talk about today is the actual story, because we haven't talked about it to audiences that can influence us. So you're going to be the first audience to influence us in this story. So a year from now, we're going to be telling this story because of something that we said here that made people laugh, and not telling other things that left you silent. So it's a responsibility. We're collaboratively writing this story of what happened last week. So please laugh at the parts that you think are important, not necessarily the ones that are funny, because it's the laughing ones that we're going to tell. All right, so where do we begin? It just happened, so we don't actually have a way of beginning.
Yeah, so, one of the reasons why we have to tell this story for the first time to you is that we don't have another story to tell you. And that's because the last few weeks we were consumed with a project. We were infiltrating a Homeland Security conference in the United States in Washington, D.C. And we chose the Homeland Security Conference because, well, first of all, because it's a funny kind of an idea, Homeland Security. It's a new idea. We didn't grow up with that. It was installed in 2001 after 9/11, when Bush George Bush II, realized that he could arrogate control and power under one big, massive government umbrella, and he would be able to institute a whole bunch of legal reforms, restrictions, the Patriot Act, other things that made it very difficult for the activists who had gotten so much momentum with the anti-globalization movement to continue their protests against neoliberal economic policies. That was the sort of silver lining in the response, the paranoid response to terrorism.
Yeah, so we saw this Congress, we wanted to go there, and we had an idea. What we wanted to do was present, we're making a movie, it's called The Yes Men Are Revolting, and in the movie there's a lot of doom and gloom. It's about climate change, it's about movements and fighting against climate change, and there's a lot of good stuff, there's a lot of happy stuff, but there's also a lot of depression, because climate change is depressing. And what do we do about it? So we really wanted to give a very upbeat, happy, positive speech at the very end of the movie, and we wanted to give it in the most hostile environment we could think of, which was a Homeland Security Congress. And so we found this Homeland Security Congress. It was filled with lobbyists. There was a retired general. There was an admiral. There was a Navy SEAL who used to kill people for a living, a paid assassin, sort of an American ninja. And there were all of these defense contractors. The conference was sponsored by Northrop Grumman, a subsidiary of Northrop Grumman called Task. It was pretty bad. And so we thought it was the perfect place to give a really stirring, uplifting, happy speech, which we prepared. And it's a very long story of preparation, but I was going to be a representative of the Department of Energy, and maybe we should show what...
Originally, we actually wanted to give them a general from the military, but a lawyer that we know suggested that maybe we didn't want to dress as a general, because in the United States, if you do that and somebody perceives you to be a general, then you can be tried for a federal crime that puts you away in jail for a very long time. And so it seemed like it would be, it seemed worth the risk to me, because why not? We haven't actually listened to lawyers in the past. Yeah. But then we realized that, we just spent about 5 years working on this new film, and if we were in jail and everything, it'd be difficult to finish it and inconvenient.
Basically, I chickened out. I didn't want to go to jail for wearing a military uniform. But then also I saw this guy, look at him. This is the head of the Department of Energy, Ernest Moniz, and he's got the most amazing hair in the world. And I thought, that is hair that we need to say something about. And so I was all set. This was, let's say, a week before. I was going to be the Department of Energy representative, whose name was Benedict Waterman. Came up with a whole speech about renewable energy and how we can convert the United States to be run on 100% renewable energy, completely remove fossil fuels, completely convert to renewable energy. Technologically, that's not far-fetched at all. There's plenty of studies that show how that could be done. It would require a massive effort, but we've engaged in massive efforts in the past. It's how we won World War II. And we can do it again. This enemy is a little more daunting than Germany was in World War II. It would take us a little longer to win, but, sorry. Bigger enemy, we can still do it. So that was the idea. In 15 years, it would convert entirely to renewable energy, but there was a little extra bit, which is that everything we would build, we would give to the people on whose land it's put. So if you put a solar panel on your roof, it's yours, and it's your electricity. You generate it from the sun, you sell it to the grid, you make a little money. The whole system works from everybody being a producer. And among the producers would be Indian reservations. Back a couple hundred years ago, North America slowly became less and less of a place for the people who lived there, the Native Americans, and they got put in these kind of, I guess, large land-based concentration camps called reservations. And many of those are in places that you don't really want to live, like where there's too much wind or it's too sunny. And those are exactly the places where we need renewable energy installations. So the Department of Energy would place wind farms, solar farms on the reservations, and they would own them and be able to sell the energy back, and that would serve as reparations for genocide. And we had a representative of the Bureau of Indian Affairs there with us, Bana Slowhorse. And
he's really an activist from the tar sands. His real name is Gitz Crazy Boy. Not kidding. Gitz Crazy Boy. And he is a Athabasca Chippewan. He's from the Athabasca River Valley, where they are now scooping massive amounts of earth and tar sands out of the ground, and then leaving toxic tailing ponds much larger than Berlin. In fact, I think the entire landmass is the size of England that they're planning on digging up and turning into a complete wasteland.
And all the pipelines that people are stopping are taking that oil to the sea for export. And if they actually make it to the sea, then it gets exported to China, or I think Europe has banned tar sands fuel, so it doesn't come to Europe, but it goes to China, for example, where the amount of carbon just skyrockets and we're doomed.
So Gitz joined us in Washington. He's going to represent the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Andy is going to be from the Department of Energy. I'm some guy from a PR company that kind of set the thing up. And what I have to do at the beginning of this thing is convince everybody that they should let the Department of Energy guy go on, even though the guy who they want to speak at this conference, who happens to be Colin Powell, isn't showing up. Right? I'm not going to explain why they think Colin Powell is going to be there, because that's a long story. But they think they believe that Colin Powell, the Colin Powell, is going to arrive. And so I show up early in the morning, and I start to tell them that Colin Powell has had a slight delay, but it's okay, because the representatives of the partner organizations in this new plan, this new renewable energy plan called American. And, there's the question, are you an American or are you an Americant? You're not an Americant, are you? I mean, if you ask Americans this question, of course they can only respond one way, right? So it works well. The new program, American, which is going to replace the entire fossil fuel infrastructure of the United States with a renewable energy generating and distribution system in less time than it took to win the Second World War. And I tell the conference organizers this in confidence because it's all embargoed. They can't tell anyone else. It's very secret. Because if they tell anyone else right now, then word will get out, the stock market will be influenced, and they'll be in trouble with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So they'll be in trouble with the law if they tell anyone.
Yeah. So what you see here is I'm the one on the right, and I've just spoken, and you can see on my head a very strange wig that, believe it or not, is supposed to emulate the wig, the hair of this guy. And
can I tell this part? This is really stupid. Okay, I don't actually know that he's going to be wearing this wig. So he walks in to just before the conference, and I'm standing with a couple conference organizers, and I'm looking at him like, what the fuck is going on? Because he walks in, and this thing did not look like hair at all. I mean, what the hell is that on his head? Well, it turns out that basically, we had somebody working with us who said, yeah, sure, I'll take care of the wig thing. But their idea of taking care of the wig thing was that they knew RuPaul's wig maker. And RuPaul's Wigmaker at 4 a.m. the morning before we went down to Washington, after the drag show, made this wig for his head and didn't show it to anybody.
Delivered it at 7 a.m. and in a very carefully closed package, and it was like, you know, it had the little net around it so that no hair would leak, and we were all like, oh, RuPaul's Wigmaker made this, and so we kept it very preciously. And then, like, right before the event, when Mike and about 10 other people were in the conference venue getting things ready, cameras, the whole thing, I was off in a little place across the street with two people who didn't have cameras or anything, and actually it was with Bana, with Gitz and his girlfriend, and we took out the wig and put it on, and it was clearly like a big blonde drag queen wig. And I realized kind of there was something wrong with it, but I tucked it behind my ear, and Amelia combed it so that it stayed behind my ear somewhat, although not entirely.
So we're always worried about our cover getting blown. We're worried about being recognized, or we're worried about people realizing we're fake. And so in he walks, and he's clearly fake. Like, there's no question about it. I turn to the conference organizer, and she looks at me and she says, what the fuck? And I say, oh, you know, it's Department of Energy. Have you seen the head of the Department of Energy, the weird hair he has? And she says to me, that's not hair. Anyway, so I was shitting myself because I think, okay, this is it. They're going to shut us down. Our cover is blown. They know. But no, a weird wig is acceptable. They greet him, they shake his hand, and they send him up to the stage.
Yep. And up on the stage, I begin speaking, and I present the plan for converting the U.S. to renewable energy by 2030. And I get very emotional, and at just the right moments, people applaud. You know, when I can't remember a word of the speech.
That's right.
But
Defense contractors, admirals, generals, all the people in the audience were genuinely excited about converting to renewable energy and doing it very quickly. Now, there were no oil executives in the room. So there were no boos in there. But I mean, it turned out that people, a general audience of Americans, of defense contractors, were very excited about doing the right thing, doing what they knew had to happen, what they knew was inevitable, and if we did it sooner, would benefit everybody.
And then, not only that, so I give my whole talk and explain how we're going to do it, and ownership of the means of energy production will go to the people who can produce it. And I also mentioned that the Department of Defense is particularly interested in this because of the massive amounts of climate change, massive effects of climate change that could well create immense conflict in the future with a lot of border crossing, migration, future wars could happen, and even worse, there's already a lot of outrage over climate change. You see these pipelines being stalled because of protesters and even stopped. I mean, the Keystone XL in the US would have already happened if it hadn't been for protesters, and there's a couple of pipelines in Canada that have been seemingly dead in the water, at least for now, because of Indigenous activism. And so basically, I said, well, what about when climate change is really felt in a very strong way by everyone? You know, then this could go anywhere. We could have revolution. And we've got to convert to an energy revolution. We've got to convert our energy today, have an energy revolution before we have a real revolution tomorrow. So that was sort of a call to revolution through the point of view of the Department of Energy, saying that's the way we will actually force these fuckers to do something. So it's a very, but they applauded that. They applauded everything. They applauded the idea of revolution. And then,
yeah, woo!
and then Gitz Crazy Boy, who takes the name Bana Slowhorse, gets up and gives a very stirring speech from the Bureau of Indian Affairs on behalf of his Native American tribe, which is the tribe of the Wannabes.
Wannabes.
And He's part of the Longback clan. He's the hereditary chief of the Longback clan. They have no butts. That's why they're called the Longbacks. It's apparently a derogatory term they use. And at the end of his stirring speech, in which he describes the effects of fossil fuels on his land and how it's an additional sickness that follows the genocidal sickness, the original ones that were spread around, now we're going to be past that. And he asks everybody to stand up, and he demonstrates a traditional Native American Wanabe circle dance. And he has everybody, all the men stand up and grab the belt loop. So normally, you know, in the movies it's like this, but in this case, you put your hand on the back of the man next to you, you slide it down to his butt, and then you grab his belt loop, and you hold onto his belt loop so that if he goes out of line, you can just give him a little yank.
Yank sideways.
Yank or whatever, yank up, yank sideways, yank anywhere you want,
Sideways, it's
whatever.
like this.
Oh, hey, I got your belt loop. And sometimes that happens, and that's a lot of fun too. So this is then Tito Ibarra, a native comedian from Minnesota, begins singing a very, very interesting song. And this is
a traditional Wanabe song.
Traditional Wanabe circle dance
To go with
song.
the traditional Wanabe circle dance.
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, I composed this song last night, and I composed it for this occasion. I made it a simple song so we can sing it together, because it's not just my song, it belongs to all of us. This is to commemorate the special occasion and moving forward. So it's real simple. The words are We'ahe. Right on, you guys are fast learners. We'aho. Okay, so I'll sing one verse, then you guys, and so on and so forth. Here we go.
Okay, goes on for 5 minutes.
So, you know, we learned that defense contractors are very human and are willing to have a good time doing a traditional Wanabe dance in celebration of converting to alternative energy overnight.
And that if we actually lead, they will follow. There are very few people in the world who actually want to see the world doomed. That's the lesson. There are some, and they're mainly the ones in charge of oil companies or standing to profit tremendously off oil company profits. But by and large, if we come up with another way of doing things and simply order or enable or incentivize or require, or whatever word you want to use, require industry to actually serve humanity instead of serve itself only, People like that will follow. Even what we think of as the dark side will follow and do a circle dance, as long as you have some good rhythm. So that's our lesson.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. No, we're telling secrets up here. Does anybody want to know some secrets? Does anybody have a question?
Yeah.
We like to, I mean, this is a huge audience, so it's kind of hard to be interactive, but individually, if any of you have questions, does anybody want to know how we set that thing up? I don't, okay.
Yeah, because there might be some hackers in the room.
Yeah, okay, so it's just a bit of social engineering. You know, a conference company is the one hosting the conference, and so they want somebody important to speak at their conference, thereby getting more people to come to their conference, paying attendees, right? So they want somebody important to speak at their conference. So it's not that hard to fulfill their desire simply by calling them and saying, do you want Colin Powell to speak at your conference? For example.
For example, you could say, hi, I'm from a company that represents Colin Powell, because of course he doesn't represent himself.
No, a particularly nasty giant PR company, for example. You know, there are all these really big PR companies. You know, Edelman is one of the biggest.
Hill and Knowlton.
Hill and Knowlton. And these companies on a daily basis tell massive lies to the public that are never meant to be revealed. I mean, they were implicated, Hill and Knowlton, for example, implicated in actually gathering the momentum of the American public behind the idea for the first Gulf War, Gulf War I in 1991. They manufactured consent for that war using a completely fabricated story about Iraqi troops taking babies out of incubators after the invasion of Kuwait. And not only was it completely fabricated, they had the U.S. ambassador's daughter, the Kuwaiti ambassador in the U.S., his daughter, who hadn't been in Kuwait at all at the time, she gave eyewitness testimony before Congress and cried about seeing the babies taken out of the incubators. It was all manufactured by a PR company. And so, you know, they're Burson Marsteller, behind the famous campaign about how smoking is good for you. That dates back a ways. But they also put together the grassroots groups in the United States, the Smokers Alliance. These are these fake grassroots groups of pro-smoking smokers, the lobby of smokers, who are there to, you know, oppose any legislation against smoking. So anyway.
To get in, so Mike becomes 4 employees from one of these PR agencies. One single PR agency, 4 different employees, 4 emails, and writes from one of the employees to the conference and says, look, Colin Powell wants to speak at your stupid little Homeland Security conference.
I didn't say stupid little Homeland Security conference, by the way. That's his interpretation.
It was a standard stupid little Homeland Security conference. He wants to speak there and make an announcement, and would that be okay with you? And they're, of course, absolutely thrilled, and they write back, and somebody, you know, I don't know, there's a lot of communication that happens over 2 weeks, at least, or 3.
Yeah, the point is it's not actually that hard. It's not espionage or anything. It's just giving somebody what they want, which is somebody famous to speak at their conference, only then withholding the famous person at the very last minute. You know, it's not rocket science.
No.
If anybody else wants to do it, I'm sure you could, because there are thousands and thousands of these conferences. And one of the things that we're working on now is a system that will enable all kinds of people out there who might want to engage in these kinds of shenanigans to do it themselves. Yeah. So for many years now, we've been getting requests from individuals, often organizations, who say, I'm having trouble getting attention for my issue. It's just getting lost. And this has been happening more and more as there's more media consolidation. Even though the internet helps, social media helps, as far as getting mainstream media attention, people have been really having a hard time because there's very limited bandwidth now.
Yeah.
And so they ask us for help, but obviously there's only two of us, so we can only do so much.
Yeah. And so this is the thing that we're launching. It's almost ready. It's called the Action Switchboard, and it's called a switchboard because that's a very old technology where human beings plug things into other things and connect people that way. And that's basically what happens. Like, you can write in, say, there's a coal plant being built near me, I want to stop it, or I have a funny idea for an action about surveillance, for example. Send it in, somebody will help you refine your idea, we'll brainstorm it a little bit, and then you can post it on a page and get collaborators. From our database, we've got about 100,000 people who've indicated they'd like to help with things over the years, and the facilitator behind it will help put you together with people. You can also advertise it on your social networks. You can raise money for it if you need, and then have little brainstorms online or in person. These are some of the brainstorms for those of you who like diagrams. Some of the nets, but yeah.
So it's a bit like, see, the homepage looks a bit like Kickstarter, right? It's individual projects that people list, and then each project has different goals. First of all, there might be a financial goal. They might use this for fundraising, so it has that capacity. But it's also a bit like a dating website, only for, polymorphously perverse polygamists, because you can date with lots and lots of people if you want to. It's more of a sort of network for people who have signed up. And so it match makes people who have ideas for projects with people who have the ability to carry them out, or the network or the resources to do it.
And behind every project, there's a real-world goal. So anytime a project comes in, a facilitator figures out what it's about, what it's trying to do, and if that's in the diagram, then where it belongs in this diagram. And what this does is to connect, ultimately, activists from across different issue areas and have them learn from each other. So there's these group brainstorms every week where people from different parts of this diagram brainstorm and share ideas across what are called issue silos. So
it's fitting things into a goal tree, because one of the problems with the type of thing that we do is that it can be just like hit and run fun. We do an action, and then if we're not part of an ongoing campaign of an activist organization, it just it happens and it's gone. Whereas we really want them to contribute to ongoing pressure that leads to some kind of substantive change. So, for example, a policy shift. And what we've found is that by working with organizations who have ongoing campaigns, we can really figure out exactly when it's appropriate to do this kind of media action, and then when it applies pressure. So, for example, a few years back, we did an action against the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is not part of the U.S. government. It's the largest lobbying organization in the world, or so they claim to be. And they often lobby against the government, or at least against the public, and public representation in government. So it's a massive pro-business lobby. For many years, they were working very hard to fight climate change legislation. And there was a big sort of activist push to try to get them to stop doing that. And we piled on. We worked with a few organizations, piled on at just the right time, and did a very well-received media event where we impersonated the Chamber of Commerce. Mm-hmm. And a few weeks later, they actually changed their position. But it wasn't because of our action, it was because it was part of a massive campaign of many activists doing many different things.
And that's what the Action Switchboard wants to foster. For example, this is a Common Dreams article, a progressive news aggregator's article. Above it, there's the usual Facebook like button, and then to the right of it, there's an Act Now button, which we're trying to develop. And that would lead to a page where you could take action on the whole issue around it. And It would include, much more standard, much more traditional activism, as well as this sort of thing. And the action that Mike just described, where we impersonated the Chamber of Commerce, could have been in this page as one of the things you could do. So it's trying to drag people to a place where then they can act instead of just like a page, and provide a clearinghouse for action.
Yeah, it's a kind of platform for facilitating more direct action and more creative direct action in places where you might not expect it. So yes, we need to sit down in the roadways. Yes, we need to go out on the street and protest, but we also need to do every other thing that we can possibly think of, like intervening in these business meetings, because the alternative, if we don't do everything that we can, and we fail, is one thing, right? Then at least we'll have tried. But if we don't do everything we can, and we don't succeed, the result is, of course, on our shoulders. So
Maybe we should take questions? Or?
Yeah, are there any questions about this stuff? I mean, we can also show you another video. But questions?
There's a voice.
If you have questions and you want to ask them directly, feel free to come up to this side of the stage to get the mic from me, or to the other side of the stage to get the mic from lovely Paul. And here's one person already.
Hi, thanks very much for talking today. Are you not worried that by talking about the things you do in front of thousands of people and lots of video cameras, that you'll be less effective with this kind of stuff in future, that people will recognize you more and stuff?
Well, that actually is why I wore a big crazy wig. I don't think I really had to. Probably if I hadn't, I mean, maybe if we're both together, we're kind of recognizable, but I think as individuals, we're pretty nondescript. So, I don't know.
Yeah, we've taken a kind of transparent approach to this. We decided years ago that we would just tell all our secrets, and because they're really not rocket science, and this kind of method that we use should be available to everybody. It shouldn't be mystical. And so really, I think holding on to that information is a worse approach, because it could be that somebody in this room wants to do something that's much bigger and more daring and more exciting and has a much bigger impact than anything we would do. And so maybe this could just help a little bit, pushing in that direction.
Great. Next question.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Andy. I was wondering if people are going to go onto this switchboard, I think you should advise them to use Tor, because it's really handy if you have like an index database of who is really creative at creating these kinds of things. So please use Tor. Please be anonymous if you do direct action like this.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Tor sounds great. Yes.
Yeah,
We'll hook
we're
you up to
sort
make
of.
that happen
I mean,
after,
Tor is great. We're sort of a little too impervious to paranoia, maybe.
We've had a very funny approach to this. Over the years, at various times we've implemented some kinds of security, like we just, PGP or something like that, and then we've abandoned it because each time we did something complicated, it limited the people we could collaborate with. And that, for us, was a bigger problem, because the types of risks that we were taking, and the types of laws that we might have been breaking, we weren't even sure were laws. Well, I guess we realized that it was that we were reacting, a lot of what we were reacting to, we couldn't see. We knew that whatever we were doing was a paranoid response, regardless of whether the paranoia had a reason to exist.
Yeah.
And so we thought, okay, like let's say the FBI is reading our email. Who cares?
Well,
we weren't I mean, for us.
Bad for us. For
For
our
us.
action, it doesn't matter as much for our action. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were waiting. I mean, we are hoping that we do get taken to court or something. I mean, we're not dealing with the mafia here. I mean, we're not going to get hit, because of the things we're doing. There are people who will, and there are countries where you will, or that'll happen to you. But for the types of things that we were doing, we realized that we could simply talk about it and hope that somebody was eavesdropping, and then see what kind of action they took. And eventually, we were hoping that we would end up in court
It's never happened.
or in jail. But that hasn't happened.
No,
We've
and-
remained at large.
The degree of incompetence is really also very comforting. Like, driving up to this Washington event, this Homeland Security Congress, we actually had this really just completely surreal experience. We have gotten paranoid at various times over the years, thinking we've been unmasked, or it's a sting, or we're going to walk into this and then they're going to arrest us. This time, we were absolutely certain that we had been unmasked, because we got a phone call from the conference organizer who had been trying to reach Mike's special cell phone and hadn't been able to, and had then taken the measure of calling the PR company that he was pretending to be from, the headquarters, and they said, "Who?" And then asked for the phone number that she had for him. And the next call we got, well, the first call we got was from the conference organizer finally getting through and sounding really suspicious and sounding like, well, your phone wasn't working. Where are you? Who are you? And then we got a call from the PR agency saying, "Who are you? And who hired you?" And he just made up a name, and they hung up. And we were absolutely certain that we were sunk. This was over. It was done. They had exposed us. They had figured it out. But then slowly over the rest of the day, it dawned on us that the PR company hadn't called the conference to tell them that they had figured out that we were hoaxsters. So it just went ahead anyways. So, you can protect yourself or not. They'll kind of do the job of stumbling around and being completely incompetent, which you can almost count on.
One more question. Hi, I wonder what was the worst kind of trouble you got into with your method of social engineering?
Yeah, the worst kind of trouble?
Chamber?
Well, yeah, we got sued, but it wasn't really trouble. I mean, conventionally, the worst trouble was when we were sued by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. These very deep-pocketed lobbyists, they spend $500,000 every day fighting against the public good. And so for them, it was actually beneficial to sue us. For most companies that have a brand to protect, it's a risk to sue people like us. But for these guys, they could benefit from it because their constituency are the richest people in the United States and the biggest companies. So anyway, we have a video to show.
We could.
Yeah, let's show it.
Okay,
Yeah, sure.
it's a 5-minute video.
Back in September, we were working with a bunch of climate change activists to plan an event in Washington, D.C. We wanted to make a political point about an organization that's pulling off some of the world's biggest hoaxes. No, not this organization. The one across the street. The one that looks like a U.S. government office, but really is working against the government. In reality, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is a large corporation that is reported to lie to the public on behalf of even bigger corporations. They spend nearly $500,000 a day trying to convince the U.S. government to do really stupid shit, like killing environmental regulations and undermining workers' rights. But since they spend so much money on their hoaxes, many people believe them. And as it says, American Free Enterprise dream big, but their dreams are our nightmares because their plans are to prevent us from passing climate change legislation, which means we're screwed. Since the Chamber was hoaxing us all and threatening our survival, we decided to fight fire with fire. We would reveal one of their biggest lies by masquerading as them. We would hold a press conference as the Chamber at the National Press Club. But first, we sent out a parody press release from them. It was sort of like their normal ones, except ours was sane. How would the world react to the Chamber suddenly reversing its position on climate change?
Been a reversal on climate change from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It will reverse its position on the climate change bill and wants a carbon tax, if you will. All right, so the U.S. Chamber's denying it now. All right, so maybe not. Apparently it was a hoax. Either there is a group or some people or a person.
Is there any involvement of the White House whatsoever?
I couldn't even begin to go there, Larry, on that one.
Today, the country's largest business lobby, the Chamber of Commerce, got punked. It began early this morning when a press release went out, purportedly from the United States Chamber of Commerce. Amazingly, the release said that the Chamber would now support this legislation that it's spent months fighting against. Reporters were surprised and probably confused at this odd turn of events, but that was nothing compared to what actually happened at the press conference when it was held later on this morning. Watch this tape.
Clean coal is a technology that has not only not been proven, it basically doesn't exist.
Okay, I'm Eric Wolfschlegel. I'm with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. This is not an official U.S. Chamber of Commerce event. So I don't know what pretenses you're here. I know some of you in the press world, but this is a fraudulent press activity and a stunt.
Who are you really, sir?
And do you have a business card? Are you with the U.S. Chamber?
I do. We can discuss afterwards.
Okay. Can I see your business card?
Can I see yours?
Are you here representing the U.S. Chamber of Commerce?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, I work there, and you do not look familiar to me at all.
Could I see your business card? Could I see your business card?
Are you interrupting? Yes, I am. And, this guy does not represent the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Can we finish the
Okay? No. This is not an official Chamber of Commerce. This is not... what is your position at the Chamber of Commerce?
I just spoke my position.
We've got working. What is your title and your official title at the U.S. Chamber?
I'm the assistant to Mr. Donahue.
Okay. This guy is a fraud. He's lying. This is, a stunt that I've never seen before. So if you'd like to actually talk to the legitimate Chamber of Commerce, I've got my business cards outside. This gentleman, I will assure you, does not have any business cards, and he's not legitimate.
Show me your business card. No, show me yours. No, show me yours.
Yeah, they both look like imposters. What?
You got a business card?
It's so weird, though. But
you don't look familiar. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says it was victimized.
Victims of a hoax by environmental activists.
They said public relations hoaxes undermine the genuine effort to find solutions on the challenge of climate change.
A hoax actually led to the chamber admitting that there is a challenge for climate change. It seems like a good first step. So next up, hoaxes about poverty, violence,
education.
Hunger.
The big education hoax. We've got a big education hoax in this country.
The hoax is a good first step.
Just today, the Chamber of Commerce changed positions, not courtesy of the yes men with that stunt in Washington a few weeks ago. But they're now saying, surprisingly to me, and I'm glad about it, that they want to get legislation, and they're now working with the sponsors of the bill.
Okay. So they spent 4 years suing us, and then they withdrew the suit just before we ended up in court with them, which made us very sad because we really wanted to go to court with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It would have been so fun. There's this process where we could have asked them questions and gone through their records too, anything that related to the case, and they actually have a lot of secrets they want to keep. It's us, whatever, they could find out some really basic, really boring stuff. But them, they actually have some really diabolical secrets. And unfortunately, they stopped pressing the case. So here we are.
That's the worst trouble we've ever been in. Okay.
Hi, thank you so much, guys, for doing this. I can imagine sometimes you deal with, serious money, and they have their own kind of shady secret service type of organizations, to intimidate people. Now you're like big, you're kind of protected because you're in the limelight. But has there ever been a point, where you had been threatened, or were you thinking, oh shit, what have I done? Now I made some serious enemy that packs a punch that maybe I'm not willing to take.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's very embarrassing stories that we have to tell, a couple of them. But one of the other times we got paranoid, we had just impersonated the US president. The presidential campaign for Bush was in 2004. And we were driving around the country in a Bush bus, a bus that looked just like the Bush campaign bus, except it had things like a missile mounted on the roof that said, "The end is near." And we had these costumes like a cowboy that would shoot, confetti out of a gas nozzle, and a gorilla. We had just all this crazy stuff. And we got ourselves invited to one conference, a ridiculous little conference. They called themselves the Web Police. The Web Police for Child Safety on the Internet was the conference, or I don't know.
International Web Police.
International Web Police was their name. And we went to their conference and made this insane presentation. We just thought, okay, this time we're just gonna go all the way. And I'll spare you the details, but they caught on, and they actually chased us into the parking lot physically. Some of the other people at the conference, not the Web Police themselves, but other people at the conference, chased us into the parking lot, threatened us with the FBI. They were going to call the FBI, which they did, and we drove off, kind of terrified.
And they were clawing at the air like zombies behind us. I mean, it was weird. They were like trying to grab us and grab and hold us back, and we had to peel away.
Yeah.
And it made us scared because we thought, oh, what have we done?
And what will they do? Yeah, what will the FBI do?
The Secret
we don't
Service.
know. We've never, the Secret Service will be involved because it's the president that we're impersonating. And so we drove to the nearest dumpster and threw away all our props so that there wouldn't be evidence. And then we went to Disneyland. And the Secret Service, actually did investigate, and the Secret Service, I think it was the Secret Service that investigated first, contacted the FBI, who then dissolved the International Web Police because they were using the word police, and they shouldn't have been. So, you can be paranoid or not.
Thank you.
I have maybe just a final question. You do all this amazing work like Hacking Life and conferences as activists, and all these actions stand for themselves, but you're also filmmakers. You have your third movie about to come out, and do all this video and work and film work to share, of course, the message that you're spreading with a wider audience. How's that impacted your work over the years? Do you have the movie in the back of your mind when you're planning these actions, or how does the one kind of feed into the other?
Yeah, it's strange. Making the movie kind of becomes a way of life planning and also of therapy. So we do often structure another action based on what happened in the last action and how it fits into a narrative.
Like this action was the big stirring happy event at a Homeland Security conference for the end of a movie about climate change and about trouble and about... It's actually a very personal story about how, at a certain point, feeling like we're getting older, it's harder to do stuff, we have conflict sometimes, and getting past that through movement, through being part of a big movement. That's a nutshell thing, but we thought about that as we were doing things, yes.
I hugely look forward to seeing the new film, and like to thank you both very much for giving a fantastic opening keynote of Media Convention and Republica.
Thank you. And
thank you so much.
I'd love to encourage everybody to sign up on our mailing list. The URL is just yeslab.org/join, and we will be reaching out to you. And if you have any ideas for actions, once you sign up, you'll be part of the Action Switchboard, and you can propose them and use it. It'll launch in a couple of months and become live, so please sign up.
It's one thing I love too. It's, you know, it's an open concept as far as I understand. You invite everybody to go and be the yes man and do this. So this is a call to action for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, what a grand opening.